Hello and welcome to Infrastructure Matters by IPWA, a podcast dedicated to exploring the dynamic world of infrastructure, asset management and public works. I'm your host, David Jenkins, Chief Executive, and in today's episode, we're diving into the heart of Australia's water sector, uncovering the challenges and innovations that are shaping its future. Joining us is a special guest, Corinne Cheeseman, Chief Executive of the Australian Water Association. Together, we'll explore the impacts of climate change on water resources, the evolution of water infrastructure, and the cutting-edge technologies revolutionising the industry. So, as always, grab a coffee, sit back, and let's unravel the complexities and opportunities in the world of water management. Thanks ever so much for joining us today, Corinne.
Thanks for having me.
So, really interested, and I'm going to kick off with the first question, is what are the current challenges facing the water sector in Australia? What are the key challenges that you're facing, your members are facing?
Yeah, that's really important. I think we often don't always think about water until we've got a shortage of it or maybe too much of it. And in the last few years, certainly we've experienced both of those things. So I would say that climate change and that uncertainty around extreme events makes it very challenging to manage water in these times and going into the future. So that unpredictability, we've been experiencing drier periods in recent months, but very recently on the East Coast, very wet periods, so floods and things like that. So I'd say climate change is number one. We also have an opportunity but a challenge with infrastructure. So do we have the infrastructure to meet the next drought, for example? Some infrastructure is ageing. Are there the funds available to build the infrastructure so that it's ready in time if we do need to bring on new water systems and water sources? And then the other thing I'd say is, do we have the people? We're a great industry and we have amazing people from all different backgrounds and disciplines. The full economy of employment is challenging for all parts of the economy, and there have been people who are moving to other infrastructure or engineering areas, for example. And so how do we attract the talent to build the infrastructure needed and manage water looking to the future? That's certainly something that's on the minds of our members.
So let's just take that first point that you said around infrastructure and the concerns around. We talk a lot about managing existing infrastructure properly. Right? So probably having an asset management plan, linking it back to your long-term financial plan. In terms of water, I would imagine that that's no different. But have we also is there also a need to build new infrastructure as well? I mean, that balance there, specifically from a water perspective, managing existing assets, but the need for new assets. How do you balance that from a water perspective?
Yes, certainly there is a need to manage existing infrastructure, and some of it in Australia is quite old. We've got sewage systems and water systems, for example, that have been around for 100 years or more. So they've held up pretty well with good maintenance and asset management strategies, but we know that there's an end of life or some renewal that's required, so that certainly is something that the industry is working on. But also when you're looking at drier periods, great population growth, so our cities are getting bigger in particular. So we do need more water, and that might come through augmenting dams in some areas, but desalination is really features as a really key part of many water strategies going into the future in most of our capital cities. So it is that diversification of supply, either building another desalination plant or augmenting existing infrastructure that is going to be required to provide the water to serve the population that is growing with less water in times of drought, for example.
So desalination, that is, from your perspective, that's a key solution?
It's climate independent, so it actually removes the risk of not having water fall in your catchments and into your dams, and most capital cities or big towns actually rely on dam water as a source as well. If you're on the coast, desalination is a really good option, and most capital cities on the coast have desalination plants already, but they're not large enough if we're looking at population growth and climate change. So there are new desalination plants being built. But also recycled water is a very real option, and looking at how we can actually move with the community and regulatory frameworks to be able to treat water, drinking water standard, after it's been recycled. is a really big thing, which we call purified recycled water for drinking. So there is an opportunity to really fast track that sort of technology that exists now, but that does require government and community change and comfort around that very safe solution, which is purifying recycled water for drinking.
So just to desalinate, and I'm interested, and we're going to talk a bit more about sort of the learning from international countries and partners. But are we experts in the desalination business? Are we experts here in Australia? Are we good at that?
Oh, we're excellent at desalination. I think the Millennium Drought, actually, when we first started building desalination plants, the first one was in Perth for community drinking water. So we've got desalination capability and plants that are running right across the country in coastal places now. And, so we've built really great capability. We are looked at globally as leaders and having really good technology and capability around either building desalination plants but also running them for the longer term.
And in terms of recycled water, I mean, is this... and I'm assuming this, so I might be wrong, but is this one of your key advocacy planks at the moment? Because you said there's changes that need to occur, regulatory frameworks and all that sort of stuff. So is that a key area for you and the Water Association at the moment around sort of recycling and trying to get that, changes that need to be changed?
Definitely. I think the recycled water is being used for different purposes or different types of water, but using it for drinking does require, that level of regulation to allow that treatment to occur so that it's safe for people to drink. And that technology is certainly there, and certainly there are recycled water plants that have been built for drinking water, but it just depends when we're ready to actually augment our supply. The same happened with desalination when it first came into the country, so in some ways it's similar in terms of any new water source needs to be accepted by the community and by the government, and the legislation needs to be there. So you'd look at Sydney Water, for example, have got a demonstration plant for purified recycled water, and that's a great opportunity for us to kind of expose people to the potential that recycled water has to supplement our water supplies, particularly when we're going to go into periods where there's going to be limited water for drinking in major capital cities.
And are there some countries in the world that are really sort of pushed ahead with this, and that sort of Australia can look at it and go, well, there is an example of really pushing ahead with recycled water?
Yeah, there are examples. I guess recently the US has actually started to implement these sorts of schemes in areas where previously there was resistance to it. But yeah, definitely it's proven, the technology is there, it's been around for a long time. We can say with certainty that the water can be treated to a level that is fit for drinking and it's safe. And it just takes time, and I guess the demand needs to be there. So obviously we've got dams already built and desalination plants, but how do we actually augment? And having a diversified portfolio of water sources is really the only way you're going to be able to manage during really severe droughts.
Yeah, okay. Now, capacity and capability. This is a big area for us as well. So, and I often say that our members, they do some amazing things. And if you need a problem solved, engineers are great at problem solving, but we need to be better at telling the story. And our members have great stories. They do some amazing things, but we're not always the best at articulating that story. So in terms of your world and the water space, and there's crossover there, water engineers, what are you doing as a peak body in the water space to encourage young people, get them interested and excited in a career in water?
That's a really good question, because we have just relaunched our Careers in Water campaign, and we have a website that really talks about the different opportunities you have if you work in water, and that does include engineering, but there's science, and there's digital and technology career paths, but there's also the opportunity, similar to myself, I've actually worked in various areas of the water industry, started in science and water quality, I've worked in data and digital, and now I'm the CEO of the Water Association. So you can have a really diverse career, and I think the attractive thing for people to understand about a career in water is actually how important the role that we do. I mean, there's nothing more important to life than water, and so I know that people who work in water get out of bed every day and actually feel really proud and of what they do, because they're making a difference to the lives of their communities and also to all Australians. So we are promoting that. We're showcasing all different sorts of people and careers and career paths that they've taken. We're looking at engaging more with universities and university students and school students to kind of open their mind to the opportunities that might exist that might be appealing, and also to showcase the different types of skills. So engineers and scientists are really important. They're really core to what we do, but there are so many different skills and career opportunities available to people if they come and work in the water industry. So we're certainly spending a lot of time promoting that across all of our channels.
So, and because there's a diverse range of people that are required to look after our water systems, there's not really a sort of a qualification that people, or is there a qualification that people go for? I mean, you can be an engineer, data scientist, yep. But in terms of, a sort of, and I know that you ran education for the Water Association. Is there a sort of an educational program that sort of crosses over all those disciplines? Is it something? So if you're a young person who wants to go into the water, you want to go into specific, but you want a broader understanding. Is there that available?
Well, I think it's about following things that you enjoy and what you're good at, and you start there. So, for example, I did a science degree and I started in water quality in the labs at Sydney Water. And then later in my career, I got into data and managing a team of data professionals. Now, I didn't go and relearn and do a degree in that, but I learned on the job and did professional development during my career. So what I would suggest is that people follow their passion. If they are good at science, or they're good at engineering, or they're good at data and IT, or they're good at communications or marketing, and water is appealing, start there, dip your toe in, and then your career will follow. And there are so many opportunities in the private sector and public sector, so it's easy to navigate a very rich career path working for different organisations in different positions during your career.
And that's actually something I was keen to ask you this, because you worked at Sydney Water, you worked at the Water Association right at the start, and then you moved into one of the big consulting firms and you got into data side of things. What was you've just said, follow your passion, but you moved from the water. What got you? What was the reason for the move, and what did you learn? And then how has that experience in the consulting side and the data side helped you now in this current role?
That's a really good question. I actually got an opportunity at Sydney Water to work in data. So I was working in the water quality monitoring team, and I became the leader of that. And there was a restructure, and there was an opportunity to kind of really hone in on the data and technology that the business wanted to use to manage water quality, for example. And so I first got my toe into that area there, and I worked there in the data and technology team for around 6 years at Sydney Water. And then I thought, maybe I actually need to test myself and see if I actually really can do this when moving a bit more broadly, sort of out of the water sector. So I had the opportunity to go and work at PwC as a data strategy consultant, and essentially applied everything that I'd learnt and done during my time at Sydney Water to other sectors. I worked for AEMO, I worked for the Reserve Bank of Australia, different sectors, but what we actually did at Sydney Water with our data was very applicable to most businesses. So it was just an example of an opportunity to kind of test yourself in terms of actually, well, maybe I actually do have some expertise now that I've developed during my career that I can help somebody else with. And so I really enjoyed that. And I do think it actually led me back to where I am at the Australian Water Association in the CEO role, because all businesses are going on a digital and a data transformation. And so I think it was attractive when I put myself forward for the position that I had that water experience and that those strong networks and relationships across the water sector, but also I could bring with it a data and technology lens that was about transformation and transforming businesses to be ready for the future. So certainly I can see how it's got me to where I am, but I must admit I wouldn't have ever thought about it, a decade ago, that this is how I would get here.
And in terms of the water side, we're doing quite a bit in the space around emerging technologies and infrastructure. And interestingly, we've done some stuff around asset tracking and monitoring. But I understand in the water sector, this is a really big thing. So you can monitor water flow, you can put widgets in, pipes, and you can understand. Is this is this something that you're focusing quite heavily on at the Water Association at the moment, around the future technologies, how to use and gaining efficiencies? Is that?
Yeah, definitely. I think the water industry actually has a lot of experience in this, going back quite a long way when they're looking at SCADA systems and IoT. And so that capability has been around in the water industry for a long time, but now the computing power and the insights and analysis is such that it's just growing exponentially. And so we actually are working quite a lot now with technology companies that want to actually work in asset-intensive organisations or industries like water businesses. And so there's some really great applications of things like AI to kind of extrapolate water leakage, water pressure, water flow. So you can actually fill gaps with data as well. Like you don't necessarily have to have potentially as many points physically as you used to have. If you actually got long-term trends and things like AI, there's a lot of predictive power, and I would say that's definitely where the water industry is going, and certainly we're seeing that in terms of the increase in digital and technology organisations and AI companies who are wanting to join the association and work with businesses that are part of our water business membership.
And are you finding that organisations, and it's not just private sector, but also, and you do span private sector and government, yes. So, and it's not just in terms of local government and adopters of these new technology. Is that occurring in Australia? Is that something that's beginning to sort of take effect or has taken effect?
Yeah, definitely. I think definitely if you're looking at skills shortages as well, or transition to an attractive career, if you can actually provide potential digital capability opportunities and development and technology to automate some of the things that are labour intensive, that actually solves part of that solution. And Australia is quite innovative. I think we undersell ourselves a bit, but I would say there are some great examples, not only using digital technology to manage assets and efficiency in things, but actually really to do amazing things like move into things like circular economy and reduce carbon emissions. I mean, I think that's the really exciting thing, and with the focus in Australia now on the carbon net zero targets, technology will play a big role in getting us there as well.
I'm keen just to understand, and you've been 4 years in the role at the Water Association, and we were just talking earlier, and I know you do an amazing conference. You have a huge number of people that attend, a big following. What's the where do you want to take the association in the next few years, and what is it that you're doing? And I'm always keen to ask as CEOs of associations, what are the plans to help support your members, and what's the biggest sort of thinking there around the next 2-3 years?
Yeah, it's something we're working pretty hard on at the moment. One of the things that I've been working with the board on is really around coming in and that, if you like, a CX digital transformation. So understanding what our members want and the members of the future might need, how we can support the whole of the sector to be strong together. And one of the things that we've been thinking about, because our conferences and the way that the industry collaborates and comes together is really phenomenal, and that's a really strong point and something that we've been working on for a long time with our members. But we're starting to develop conferences that are very targeted around multidisciplinary, multi-industry conferences. So we've got one in Perth at the end of next month called Connected by Water, and that is about water underpinning many industries such as mining, such as the green hydrogen economy, looking at agriculture and those sorts of things. And that has been really well received. We've got over 400 people coming to Perth. We've nearly actually filled out the plenary room. It's that successful. And so things like that, we're thinking, well, let's get in a room with all these people who care about water and are managing water to achieve their outcomes in their respective industries. But also, how do we actually keep that conversation going? So the outcomes of that conference and what comes out of that, do we set up task force? Do we actually start to work together on some of the solutions around carbon net zero, and how can we work on the green hydrogen economy, because water is a really big part of that. So, that's just an example. We're also doing it in the Indigenous or the First Nations space. So we'll be running in August next year a conference called Voices from the Bush, and it'll be the second time we've run that, to focus on regional water management issues and also remote Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander community issues around water for drinking and water for health, but also just looking at those environmental issues and livability outcomes that we want to get from having clean water in the environment.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of the international space, and I was keen to come back to this, and I'm always fascinated to know, and I think professional bodies in Australia a lot of them do this quite well. How do you reach out to your international affiliates, connections? What sort of work are you doing on the international space? Could you just enlighten a bit?
Yeah, we decided probably about 10 years ago, actually, when we first started working in Vietnam, that we wanted to focus on our regional partners that were close to home. And so we've been working with the federal government on priority areas. So water underpins every economy. So if you're in a developing world, you can't actually build your economy and improve the outcomes for your people without water. Yeah. So we're really foundational part of those economies. So in Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, and more recently in the Pacific, we've been working with Australian government funding to build capability in the water industry or the water sector in those countries. So I'd say we're most advanced in Vietnam, and what we do is we have run twinning programs, if you like, from some of our members, water utilities, and partner up with water utilities in those countries and build like a year-long relationship. And there's an exchange of knowledge, and there's some tours that go back and forth to solve some problems with asset management, it might be, or it might be around climate change outcomes, or it might just be actually basically looking at the water or wastewater systems in those parts. And we build those relationships with funding for a year, and then usually they last much longer than that. So we've got an example of a relationship with Colaban Water in Victoria and a water utility in Vietnam that has been going for 6 or 7 years now. And we're currently funded to do a bit more work with them. So so that's been great. We work with the associations, our counterparts in those sectors also, to kind of build a strong association to support their industries. And we work a lot with government to government on policy forums. So what water policy and legislative frameworks do you need in place to achieve your outcomes for water and sanitation and achieve things like the SDG or the Sustainable Development Goals around water and sanitation for all. So so we've been doing quite a bit on that. The other thing is that we also match up, needs in those countries with technology solutions from Australia. So that's another way that we actually bring in technology solutions. And in small economies or emerging economies, sometimes a technology solution can really accelerate or leapfrog them in terms of their journey around what they're hoping to achieve around safe drinking water. So we've got lots of examples over the last 8 or 9 years in those countries, and I would say that our members get so much out of feeling like they're giving back into
So it's all volunteer,
like
all volunteer.
So we fund the travel and we project manage the plans, but the organisations contribute their employees' time. And it's also a great retention strategy and development strategy for employees of those companies because it's such a great experience to be able to travel to another country and actually see how they manage water and manage their assets and how they provide water to their communities.
You're doing a lot. So is there plans to expand that side of things and to do more across the it's a fine line, isn't it, between supporting the domestic and are there future plans around that?
Definitely we want to keep working in that direction. I think our plans are not so much about having more partnerships necessarily, but actually really getting impact out of the partnerships that we have. So, just thinking about how we can really go on the journey around ensuring that people have sustainable water supplies. So I would say that our impact is getting greater, and there is great business opportunities for our business members in Australia. In places like Vietnam, there are great commercial opportunities, and I think that is going to be our lasting legacy as well when they get to a point that they actually are really investing in new technologies and that Australian companies can help them with.
Yeah, good. Now, lastly, I'm just really keen because we're really sort of passionate as you are about. We talked about capacity and capability and getting young people interested and excited in water, and infrastructure for us. What is it if we have people listening here on this podcast, hopefully, who are sort of thinking, this is, I'm interested in getting into water or, going to water industry. What advice would you give to them?
I think back to what I said earlier is about start with your passion, find something that you're good at and then look at the opportunities. I think there are lots of opportunities to come in through cadetships or straight from uni and graduate programs or just to apply for a job. I would say there are lots of good opportunities now that are emerging, particularly with the investment in infrastructure and some of the ambitious goals we have around climate resilience and carbon net zero. So just to open the door, like open up a conversation, put your hand up and maybe even go and volunteer your time to get involved and get behind some of the initiatives that are happening already.
Now, I did say that was lastly, but I've actually got one more question, if you don't mind. So if we were to sit down here in another sort of 2-3 years and look at what does success look like for you in the Water Association? Where do you want to see the Water Association in 3? Yes, let's put a bit longer than that. Let's say sort of 4 to 5 years time. Where do you want it to go, and what does success look like?
I think that we've got a really exciting 3 or 4 years ahead of us. While there are big challenges, I definitely think that the water sector is up for them, and I'm really excited to see the progress we make around solutions that work with other industries and other stakeholders and the communities that they serve around climate resilience, carbon reduction. The innovation is exponential, and I think that as an association, we'll be stronger, and our support for our members and the collaboration we have with them will be even stronger than it is today. And we have been around for over 60 years, so I'm pretty proud of that, but I really am very excited about the future.
Good. And I can just tell that with the conversation we've just had. So look, thank you ever so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it, and I hope that I'm certain that IPWA and Australian Water Association will do some things in the future together. So thank you.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, David.
And that brings us to the end of another insightful episode of Infrastructure Matters by IPWA. Big thank you to our esteemed guest, Corinne Cheeseman, for sharing her valuable insights and experiences in the Australian water sector. Today's conversation not only highlighted the challenges we face, but also illuminated the path forward with innovation, collaboration, and sustainable practices. As always, to our listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope today's discussion has sparked your interest and broadened your understanding of the critical role of water management in our lives. Stay tuned for more episodes as we delve into the world of infrastructure and public works. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more engaging conversations. I'm David Jenkins, signing off and reminding you that in the realm of infrastructure, every detail matters.